Thank you. So just as these guys jump off, Love Out Loud's creative director, Aditya James, is going to be joining Adam Mcinnis. I'm going to let them in right now before I give a formal introduction. Welcome to the Global Unity Summit, Adam, Aditya. What's up? What's up?
Hello, hello.
Oh, hello, Adam. Hey, Aditya. Hey.
Hey, so good to jump back in.
Of course. Adam, how's it going today?
So far, so good. There's zero complaints. Just got done with a hour-and-a-half massage, and now we are here.
What an amazing way to enter the summit. Unify the body, unify the breath.
Yeah, even my eyes right now are still, I think from the release of all the toxins, they're like blurry a little bit.
We're far enough away that we can't see that.
Yeah.
So looking sharp.
Yeah.
It's looking great.
Awesome.
Adam, I haven't given you your formal introduction yet, and you're of course so amazing that I would love to let all our viewers know right now all of the incredible things you've achieved as we enter into this very important conversation. So Adam Mcinnis is a 5-time award-winning songwriter, producer, and film composer, the founder of the Billboard 500 Club, private membership for musicians, artists, and rising industry executives. Most of all, Billboard 500 is a worldwide network for emerging artists to collaborate, support each other, and find exposure, not just to high-level opportunities, but to the measurable impact of their role in our world as people who lay the soundtrack of our era. So good, brother. Whilst you might recognize Adam's music from chart-hitting pop songs and major films like Fast and Furious, Batwoman, and more, Adam has another plan for the future of music and a bigger understanding of how it's driving our future. We're about to get a fascinating peek into your world, Adam, learn why you're so dedicated to not just producing blockbuster hits, but to using music and reshaping our music industry to heal conflict and shift our world from fear to love. What an amazing mission. What an aligned mission. Can I just can
I guess that's why I'm here talking to you.
That's right.
You all. This is good.
And we're so great.
It's because like frequency connects itself. So frequency is more than just sound. It's the resonance that comes out of each of us. So when we say things like this, like we're here together, it's because we're riding a similar frequency.
Amen.
Literally, from a physics standpoint, this is what really excites me. Yeah, Nicole, when I first met you, it was shortly after that when I found out that you are also a musician and I heard your music, I was like, oh, I've got to introduce these two, because the movement that's underneath your music and how you go about it and your why is so aligned. And to just have these powerhouses and my same eye view is so exciting to me. So I'm really, really excited to be able to share a little bit about Adam's world, which blew me away when I first really got to hear your story, Adam, and to be able to share that with our audiences and open some minds, hopefully, to a new way to listen and create music.
Well, I'm here. You let me know what I can be of service with.
Yeah,
awesome.
and to formally introduce Aditya, I mean, you guys met the whole team yesterday, but just a refresher for anyone that wasn't live with us. And Aditya, I'd love you to share a bit about your background as well. But Aditya is a creative director of In Truth and Love Out Loud, the mastermind behind our new site, all of the creatives that you see. Aditya's amazing finesse and work. Experiential artists, I believe, is the title that you feel most connected to, which I think rings so true to what we're bringing to life, right now through these conversations. Aditya is the manager of the Love Out Loud podcast, which we're relaunching, by the way. A special shout out. I know Sam is watching this stream right now. The global affair is the relaunch of the podcast with a very similar intent to the Summit series to have these sorts of conversations. So Aditya is going to be taking over and interviewing Adam. These two have a rich history of friendship. And I personally am super excited to actually get to enjoy and listen to the wisdom that I know is going to be transmitted through this session. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Aditya, but I just want to say, Adam, we're so grateful And I'm personally so excited to hear someone in the music industry who has reached the top, you know, got all the merits that someone pursuing the Hollywood dream could ever dream of having. And within that, have stayed true to far more altruistic and humanitarian vision for what music can really bring our world. And, you know, as someone that's very passionate about music myself, a personal thank you, but on behalf of the world and specifically the Love Out Loud community, thank you for doing the work that you do. And thank you for sharing in advance all of the wisdom I know you're going to share today. So much love.
That was extremely sweet. I really appreciate that. Like when I say sweet, I'm talking about dulce, like true richness in the flavor. So I really appreciate that very much.
Yeah, brother.
Thank you.
So excited. Thank you, Nicole. Adam, I just want to say first off too, after, besides echoing everything that Nicole just said, one of the things that I appreciate so deeply about how you go about what you're doing is that you're really making a change. And there's a lot of people that I have been connected with that have been deep inside the music and the media industry who have been angry and bitter. And I've heard a lot about what's not working, but I haven't seen anybody so in action towards what is the new possibility of what the music and media industry can look like, and actually addressing that art and music is one of the most pivotal turning points of our world, and helping musicians recognize that in themselves. So
yeah. Well, I mean, just to piggyback off what you're saying, a lot of what happens, I believe, I'm going to call it programming. I'm only going to call it programming because if you look at it, it's called a radio program, a TV program, and then it programs the individuals that are in front of it. And there's certain words that people tend to not question. They just repeat over time because they hear them so much. And one of them is called entertainment. But if you look at that word, it also means entrainment. And it's kind of hidden in there, where if you repeat something enough, people start to believe it without questioning it if no one else has taken the time to say, wait a second. And there's this sort of quote or statistics that there's, I think it's like 80% of people in the world are followers, 15% of the world are leaders, and 5% of the world are observers. And those who are observers tend to be able to see the things that have cracks in the system. And the observers are also considered visionaries. So when they see something, we move differently and we think differently. And most likely we're met with people not agreeing because they're programmed not to. So since we're talking about the music industry, I think it's really interesting how if you really ask someone what the lyrics are to certain songs, a lot of people don't know all the lyrics. And if you say to someone, if you're to remove the music and just repeat lyrics of some of the songs on, say, like the Billboard charts, and like read them to your kid as like a going to bed book, so many people would say no. But why do they allow it when there's a beat behind it? So there's this convergence of feeling, quote unquote, free, like, well, everything should be free and everything should be open, and we shouldn't feel like this is negative. And we should be okay to this because it's just art. But if you tell someone, cool, read that art to your child, just you read it to your child, and all of a sudden everyone stops and goes, wait, no. Well, we have to come to a place and go, okay, then is this really entertainment or is this entrainment? And I think a lot of times those conversations aren't really had because the ego knows they'll make someone feel uncomfortable because they'll have to take accountability for what they've been putting into their own body and allowing to be put in their body. And most people think putting into their body is something physical. We're still in that part of awareness that the majority of even conscious people haven't come to the realization that what they put into their body comes at all 5 of the senses that are visible, but then let's say another sense as well, like their 6th sense, like their intuition, and they think putting in their body is just food. Right. So anything drink, but like mentally and verbally, like audio, like these things are very powerful. And if you look at movies, most people probably have seen their favorite movie, like their favorite movie 20 times, like tops, but they probably heard a song 500 times. So the level and the power of what a song can do into that training process is something that movies, even though have an impactful way, and TV shows can, there's that big of a separation. It's the repetition. And we are a species that learns from repetition and impact. So we learn from shock and we learn from repetition.
Mhm.
When you put those two into a pill, it gets really, really powerful.
Shock and repetition. That's so interesting, because that really aligns so much with how a lot of like impact art really works. Is it starts with a pattern interrupt that catches people's attention, and then it literally will insert something into our being, so instead of what am I putting into my body, what am I putting into my being, is a very relevant question right now. And we hear about awareness and people practicing awareness and awareness apps, but I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing you talk about is the fact that it's critical for people to realize now that one of the superpowers of all human beings that we are born with is the power to learn. We are incredible learners, and we can even do it when we don't know what's happening. So what we are putting into our being is programming us, and unless we are aware of it, and then we can witness it.
Yes. And that part of witnessing, it's interesting because I can only tell you how I've seen people be able to access that. Some people have experiences, meditation, medicines. They have maybe a good friend that they can listen to, can pull them out of something, a mentor sometimes. But it's rare when someone's in the program that they actually know that they're in it.
Mhm.
And so when these things are brought up, a lot of times people say it goes over their head, but it actually doesn't go over their head. It goes in. It's just filtered out very quickly because it doesn't serve where their ego is at. So there's that power of the witnessing part of, you actually have to be able to hold a mirror in front of yourself. That's the witness, is the reflection. So I actually do a thing with my musicians. So I host private retreats out here in Costa Rica, where I get to actually sit one-on-one with some musicians who are extremely talented people. And I do a thing called a soul talk. And I've noticed during the soul talk that I've seen the biggest changes of people on a one-to-one basis comes from these conversations. And they're very short conversations, so probably only last 15 minutes.
Wow.
But I've seen people do what I would say therapists have been trying to do for sometimes 15 years. And I've seen them unwind themselves. And they'll tell me, they'll say, I've been to therapy for 15 years. I've been in and out and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what happened just right now was more impactful than all that time. And
Wow.
Part of it, and I'm going deeper into it, but I think part of it is that a lot of therapists don't use the mirror effect and holding someone truly accountable for those things, because their job is really just to listen and then to give small advisements and judge and like small movements, but not to like have clear reflection points. And with soul talks, you can't run from your soul. So you kind of get in a place where the mirror is as clear as it can be. And I've seen people literally in not less than 2 minutes just start crying. And it's just from asking certain questions, because, and this is like another deeper conversation we get to another time, but it's almost like the soul is always trying to come forward to actually live an awakened life. But the society and the programming holds that part of them down. So they get really good at masking. It gets great at masking itself.
Mhm.
And if you can allow it to come forward, which it wants to, and allow it to shed the ego, which is basically holding it captive a lot of times, when it comes forward in these soul talks, it's extremely beautiful. And it's probably one of the most honest things that the person can do, is when they actually come forward and hear themselves speak for the first time and go, wow, I've been wanting to say it for years and I just never have. It's like, yeah, you've been holding it captive.
Amazing. The work I've heard you share that you're doing in Nosara in Costa Rica is profound, and it makes sense to me. I'd love to bookmark Soul Talks for whatever you are able to share in this special formula, but that raises a really great question. Why did you move your recording studios from Los Angeles to Costa Rica? Did it have anything to do with the space that you were able to work with musicians in? What was the impetus for that?
Well, my first question is this conversation recorded or is it live right now? Is this going to be re-edited or is this going to be given as such?
We are live, and it can be re-edited, but we are live. Yeah. I know there's
Okay.
only so many things that can actually be shared once you're inside the industry.
Exactly. That's
But
why
I
I'm
have to
asking.
ask a question.
Yeah.
Whether you can share.
So the reason why I left the States in the first place is because I would come to Costa Rica as a way to recharge once a year. This was sort of like a battery pack. And I've been doing that for about 10 years. And I noticed whenever I came here and I spent around a month, the way you process information starts to change and gets back in alignment with how you were supposed to be. Like it's like a reset button. What I mean by that is living in major cities, which I've always lived in major cities for music, Los Angeles and New York and Austin and Florida. Like I've always lived in major cities. You get used to the constant static. For instance, I used to always fall asleep with the TV on because I was used to hearing sirens from growing up in New York. And I would hear sirens all the time. So I got used to hearing people outside the window and yelling and fighting and sirens and just the bustle of the city. And so I got so used to it. And I just always assumed, oh, well, I'm from New York. That's why. And that's just part of, but what it was actually doing, it was training the amount of static that I was becoming comfortable with. And then what I noticed when I came to major cities, and I would always notice this when I came back. So this is something that anyone can see when they've been to a place that has no real agenda. When there's no capital agenda, and then you go back into a place that does, you see it instantly. You get off the plane, and I'm just going to tell you what you'll see. You're going to notice that people travel in name brand tribes. If the father has on a Nike shirt, the wife has on a Nike hat, the child has on Nike sneakers. So I started taking pictures of this. I have a full catalog of like 300 pictures of people, and you can see that they travel in these packs. If they have on Michael Jordan symbol, the other person has Michael Jordan symbol, another person has Michael Jordan symbol. If someone has on Gucci, someone else has on Gucci, someone else has on Prada. If it's a name brand city, if it's a name brand tribe, they travel with name brands. And they'll even travel with the same colors. That's what gets even fascinating. If someone has on a gray hat and a gray shirt, she has on gray pants and gray shoes, the little kid has, they all travel within colors and brands.
What a fascinating thing to play with for listeners to go about the next week and just observe and see if there's any patterns like that.
Next time we travel, I tend to notice it's when people travel together. So planes, like anytime you're in an airport, just look at how people are in their lines and look at who the families are, and you'll see these things. So that's the first thing I started noticing. The second thing I started noticing was the sexual manipulation that they post with big, large heads of women. So when you walk into an airport, it's a lot of beautiful women, but their heads are enlarged. So like it's like a 15-foot head, almost like if you're walking to a palace, you would see these massive statues, but all the faces are looking at you with seductive eyes. And they're selling a product, but you never see men. There's no male figures. It's female figures that are all selling makeup and hair products and different experiences, but a lot of it is very focused on how do we give you a very seductive look in the mouth, in the face, in the eyes, and the heads are magnified like massive levels so you can see it. So I started noticing that. I started noticing that a lot of the people were always staring at their phones, and they had their kids on their phones too. So they're using their phones as pacifiers for the children. And so you would see a line of people all staring down. And when you start to look at it, it looks like a very interesting, like futuristic robots where no one's really aware of what's even going around them. And similar to, I don't know if you ever remember calling, or if you ever called a child's name when they're playing a video game, they're so in a state of trance that they actually can't hear you. And so I called him like 5 times. They actually can't hear you, because when you go into a state of hypnosis, if you've ever been in a state of hypnosis, voices sound very distant. And so that's what's happening is the only people are going into a state of hypnosis. So I would notice that every time I came back, and I'd be fully charged, because when you're in the jungle, your perception of your how you hear increases because you hear sounds across the jungle. So when someone's beating a drum, boom, 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 and I hear that 2 miles away, you're able to have senses that aren't used when you're in a major city, because in a major city there's sounds coming from everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
And then when you're having food that's natural, so you're removing all those sugars and you actually have really natural food, you start to realize the food tastes better when it's coming right from the ground, and there's a different flavor profile. When you start to meet other people who are like yourself, going to sleep with circadian rhythm, when the sun goes down, when the sun comes up, and you're all kind of waking up with the world together, and you're not waking up under a stressful way because there's nothing that you have to do. It's that you're waking up in a day to live another good day of life. There's this pattern that starts to repeat itself and ingrain itself into the individual. Now, there's a lot of other things I can get into. I'm talking about the levels of oxygen from the trees, because you're actually in the middle of the trees, or in the middle of the jungle, which I talk to some people and they'll say, I was like, how was your day? And they're like, oh, it was so good. I got a chance to go to the park and walk my dog. And that was a good day that they got to get on trees. That's how far we've come from nature, is that's a good day to be around trees. So when all these things come together, you also have the salt water that's toxifying your skin, and you're able to sun, you have tons of vitamin D. I started to notice that all those things combined create like an energy recharging pack. And then I would go back into the city and I would see all those things. And each time I would come back, they would increase. So I would see a couple kids on their phones one point, and a couple, large faces, and a couple of this. Every year I go back, it would become more and more. And I'm like, wow, it's increasing because it runs by a capital society. It's making money from them. So it's only going to keep on increasing. Out here, there's no sales. You don't see signs for 50% off while you're driving on the street. There's nothing constantly bombarding you to buy something. So when you're not focused on being a buyer, you actually get a chance to breathe. Because right now, everyone's trying to sell to you from every angle. Every single angle. From the minute you step out of your house, you're being sold something. When you remove that information coming at you, that static, your brain gets to process and gets to remove things. So I've seen people who were addicts of some sort, like heroin addicts, crack addicts, cocaine addicts, alcoholics. They've come here, and usually on their own accord, within 1 year, they're no longer an addict. And it has nothing to do with the fact of do they have access to these things? Because you can find access to anything. It's the fact that a lot of people that I tend to notice in first world countries that have addictions are really just masking things that were heavy processing, not even masking traumas. It might have started as a trauma, but it became a way to constantly process the overuse of their brain power. So when they did that drug, their brain finally could shut off. And they would go, oh, I don't have to think anymore. And then the harder the drug, or the more disassociated they came from themselves, like, I get to let loose when I do X, Y, and Z. It's because their brain is over processing things that it's not meant to process. The human brain was not developed this way. Nothing else in history has had to work on this many processes. There's no computer that works like our brain. So I started to notice that people were removing addictions without having to do anything really, but just live a normal life. And so, when you're asking questions about like why, the thing for me also was the kicker on top of it for the music side is I asked a very simple question to many people and no one had the answer. So I realized I had to go on the hunt for what the answer was. And the question was, when a farmer is planting his seeds or her seeds into the soil and then selling that to people that they say they care for, their community, if there's a pesticide that's in that soil or that's being put on that soil, is it important for the farmer to know, A, that it's happening, and B, what it could do to the people it's giving its food to? And if the answer is yes, the farmer's responsible. And the same thing goes for musicians, because music is a frequency. So if we're giving music to people we say we love, these people who are our fans, yet the farmer or the creator is putting in frequencies that are poisonous, then it's time that we rethink that model, because we can see that the people listening to them are becoming poisoned. And we can see the people listening to it are destructing, and there's like a self-destructive button that's happening. So when I started to bring musicians out here, we'd hold these retreats where it was just make music that you get connected to. I started noticing the musicians would say the same thing. Like, this is some of the best music I've ever made in my life. And I realized why. It's because several reasons, but one of the main ones is that when we record music usually with an agenda and usually in a box. It's usually in a studio that has padded walls and has no light coming in.
A literal box.
It's literally a box. We're literally creating it in a box. So what happens is, if you're really stressed out, you're putting your stress into a microphone that can capture your stress frequency at the highest level possible with inside of a box with an agenda to sell that to other people. Now,
This
when
is
you break down
fascinating,
that,
especially considering that as musicians rise, in particular, the amount that they're dealing with on a daily basis, the social pressure, the visibility, trying to keep up with even knowing who they are, that's a tremendous amount of stress, and it does carry in our voice. We have a lot of research on this.
it's resonating. It's a resonating frequency. It's literally in the way they speak. It's how people sing. So when people come out here, like, I'll show you the view from the studio, but this is the studio behind us. But this is what they get to record while they're looking.
Oh, that's music right there.
So what happens is, when you take amazing musicians, give them this to reflect off of, don't put them in a box, have a few weeks of eating natural foods, making their ears go back to being restored, where they can hear the finest details and they're not being over processed. And you start to relieve the central nervous system, and then they get to use their voice again. That frequency going into the soil, into their fans, well, that's a whole different thing. And so that's my main goal, is to reconstruct the equation of how we've been doing music over probably, like, how this industry has been changing it now lately. Because and I think in the future, people will realize this. It's just that I'm probably one of the ones on the cusp when it comes to mainstream industry taking a stop to say, wait a second, we should probably think about this before this goes too far.
Yeah. I really love that you actually just referred to fans as soil, meaning like this is where ideas are fertilized. This is where the fruits of humanity are fertilized. And that we are all seeds and soil. This is a really powerful message to bring recording artists. And I imagine that this is an interesting tension between wanting to be successful, needing to make something that humans are expecting to hear, or that does entrance them in a certain way, and putting out content that really nourishes humans. So, one question I actually have, you recently won 2022 Song of the Year for co-producing and co-writing Next Level at the Korean Pop Awards. This has, at the time that I looked at it, over 250 million views, probably more at this point. What was that like to create a song like that? Can you tell us a little bit about the controversy around that song, and what was it like to create something that impacted that many people?
The interesting controversy about the song, it starts a few years ago, probably 5 years ago. I told one of my close friends, who is a very respected executive, and I told them that I had a formula to writing hit songs. And they told me that that's impossible, that there is no formula. And I said, I can prove it. So there is what's the best way of saying it? There's a sacred geometry that's in all hit songs. It's embedded there. Most people, if I point it out, will then have this major aha moment. Like, even the average person, if I was to point it out, would go, oh my God, it's been there. And I'd say, go through all the songs you love now. You're going to see in everything. But a lot of people who work in the music industry, because it's not known knowledge, and this is what I teach to my mentees. I teach them the sacred geometry that's embedded in all music. So that way they can be conscious about how they want to create, and they can create knowing that it will impact their listeners in a positive way. Because I think what happens is, let's say someone is a conscious artist, and when I say conscious, just aware of their intentions of what they want to put into the world. And I think all of us musicians, I can't speak for everyone. I can just say what I went through is when I first listened to music, I was inspired by other musicians. But then as you get to the age to where you create music, the industry has changed from when you listen to music. So if I try to do a song similar to what I heard growing up, people would be like, oh, that's dated. So the whole point of evolving usually has to do with the production of the song and the lyrics. So if you go back to Boys to Men just 20 plus years ago, they were like, I'll make love to you like you want me to, like, and I'll hold you tight. Those lyrics would never work on today's radio. Today, it's like drop it on the floor, let's throw money in the air. And like, it's a totally different thing now. So these things that I grew up passionate about listening to, you can't recreate them. People won't even hear it anymore because they find it as being dated. That being said, there are, like when I say geometry, it's down to rhythm. And when I say geometry, I'm literally talking about numbers. It's a number system that's within all hit songs. Since I figured this out, I started to put this in all of the songs I was making, and it becomes second nature after a while. And I knew that over time, it was just a matter of time that something would become, let's say, surpass a lot of the other ones. And that's what always happens. There's a friend that I had out here who's a Grammy Award winner. He wrote the song Love Don't Cost a Thing for J-Lo. And I asked him, how many of your songs, because he's an amazing songwriter. So I said, how many of your songs become big hits, even now that you have your network, you have a team, you have all these things? And he said, usually 1 out of 50. And so I thought, okay, if 1 out of 50 for him with his big songs still takes it to become a hit, then I'd give myself up to 100 songs. If I gave myself up to 100 songs, I'd probably have that song in there amongst other ones that would place. And that's literally exactly what happened. So for me, I'm very process driven, because I believe that you can replicate things, you can reverse engineer things, but it's about getting to the nuanced level to truly understand how that thing works. Otherwise, you're just kind of reverse engineering the outer layer, outer shell. You actually have to understand how the egg is created, and then you can reverse engineer something, and you can see the fruits of that kind of come back. So that's that part. Now, as far as impact, to be honest, it's one of those things that's really strange because nothing changes. I think a lot of people in the music industry, at least me coming forward in the industry, always thought, well, when you get something really big, then your life changes. And if anything, it's more of like a validation of the things that I was saying that I was able to do. If I was, even to myself, like, it's validated. So I said this would happen. I used the process. The process works.
Didn't that song get banned because it was too catchy?
Yeah.
Like, really?
So they banned it in certain countries because kids weren't able to study during their final exams. So, because it was running in their heads.
Wow.
I think it's the first song I've ever heard that's ever happened to.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So again, there's some interesting parts to that. Now, the interesting thing about that song, I'll be honest, is that there's several things in that song that happen that shake the listener. There's 2 key changes in that song. And those 2 key changes were brought by the Korean producer who was involved in this. And that's what also took the song to like this quote unquote next level. It changed it in a way that it sounds like nothing else. So it was a mixture of us and a mixture of him, and then coming together with this group that's amazing, aespa, who's kind of like the Destiny's Child of K-pop right now. So all those elements had to be combined. It's not just about a song, but I will say, once again, the geometry in the song has to be the foundation for all those other things to then stand upon.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I will never look at the word programming the same since these conversations. It literally is programming. How does seeing what you're calling like the sacred geometry of music and how it affects us, how does it affect how you hear music and experience it yourself?
Well, I'm aware of it. So it's kind of like when you watch a movie and you're a script writer, you know when someone's using like a foreshadowing moment. You're like, okay, that's me back and later on in the movie, because you know how it's written. So if I listen to the first half of any song, I know how it's going to be. I do this all the time with my mentees. I show them, I say, show me the first half, and I'll literally show you how the rest of the song's going to work. So there's the part where I don't, quote unquote, like listen to a lot of music on the radio anymore because I know how it's going to be. But the music that I do get inspired by listening to is when we do our events where we basically bring some of the top musicians in the world, we put them on stage, and myself included, like where we all perform, but then we have no clue what we're going to make, and we're in front of people or they're in front of people. And I think that's where things get very special, because we have 100 people here on stage. There was, at the last show, there was 9 or 10 musicians, all different countries, all experts at what they do, very well known. And then the piano composer would just start with one chord progression, and the song went for 25 minutes. And when you watch that and you get to experience that, where you have no clue what's going to happen, so therefore I can't use my process brain in this moment. I have to completely surrender to where will the magic go, where will the energy go. And when you get to see that in real time, it's actually a healing thing. I'm not talking about in a hippie way. Like, I actually see people crying in the audience, and just shows like the power of music when it's unbridled, because the energy of everyone fully embodied their instrument without having to think. These are professionals. When that's reflecting off other people at that level, you hear the violin go off, and then the cello player starts harmonizing, the piano player starts playing, and the guitar player, and then you start going, oh my God, this is where this almost like, in a sense, an entity. And when I say the energy that's formed, you feel that coming forward. And then the musicians get off stage and they say the same thing every time. They're like, I have never been in a show like that. I've never played like that. I don't know where that came from. And I say, that's when we're going back to being the conduits and the channels for music. That's opening back up the channel of why we all started this in the beginning, rather than just like making a song for the radio. If that happens, great. But this is something else that's just a different side of the puzzle. That's all.
Yeah. Music, it blows my mind how a lot of people don't recognize how unifying music is, or rather how much of a mirror music is of how unified we already are. Like, why is a sad sound a sad sound? When you play a D minor key, if you play a sad song to anybody around the world in any country that speaks any language, they're gonna hear a sad song. And then you hear a marching song that's like, a major chord that's very happy, they're gonna hear a happy song. But nobody needs to tell them this is a happy sad, this is a sad song. So what is it about that, where humans naturally resonate with these different frequencies with emotions? And then there's a communication that's happening in those emotions, and it allows us to get these emotions through us and out of us, and to connect that, oh, you feel that too. This is something that I grew up with a camera in my hand. My dad was a video producer, and a piano, and I was painting on everything. And I had so many emotions and so much chaos happening in my home and in my life. I didn't have, with my child mind, the intellectual capacity to understand what was going on. But what came through was a prolific amount of art, because it allowed me to feel. And when I created this art, other people would look at it and they would feel what I was feeling. And so for me, it actually became the only way that I could communicate, because I was a weird kid. I was known as a weird kid, but I could draw and I could play the piano. And this was my way into society. And I look back on it, it wasn't even just my way into society. It was how I could know that I was actually a part of all of this.
When you say a part of all this, what is all of this?
That is a big question. Right?
Yeah.
I think we spend a lot of our lives encouraging people to ask the question, who am I? And it's a wonderful question. And I'm really excited when we can kind of mature a little bit past the point of really getting clear on who we are as individuals, so we can start asking the more interesting question, which is, who are we?
Agreed on that one. I think, well, two things before I forget. One is what I tend to notice a lot of times, especially in this is more of a Western society thing, is that who am I usually based around someone's work. So it's unfortunate, but in theory, there is a form, and I'm going to say this word, and some people get triggered by this word only because they associate their idea of what something is. But a lot of, in today's modern society, it's basically a form of indentured slavery. And it's just minus someone actually being in a handcuff and being hit with whips and chains, but the same concept, which is that people are generally not really free. They just have the idea of freedom, which is very interesting. Because if someone's like, no, I'm free. And I go, oh yeah, can you go to work when you want to? And they go, no, I have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, can you just wear whatever you want to that job? Well, no, I have to wear this. I was like, then you're not free. You have to wear a suit, or you have to wear an outfit. You have to wear a costume. You have to wear something for someone else's approval, right? To get paid. So and therefore, in order for you to eat, someone else must verify, which means you have to be underneath them and in line with what they want. That's a form of slavery. Now, we can dress it up all these different ways and we can pretend like it's not, but I think that's also the geniusness of the branding, because the Westernized society is really good at branding things. So at the same time where people have the most amount of opportunity than ever before, there's also people who are hurting the most and have the highest level of depression, anxiety. So how does that work unless there's really good branding? You can't show me a smiley face in a big home, but then inside the home, people are cracking, because that means there's just really good branding. So because the reason why I can say it very confidently is because I know people, especially in different countries that I've been to, and even here, that don't have anywhere near the things that people have in modern society, and they're genuinely happy, genuinely. Yeah. So I think what happens is there's this thing of who I am is associated with my work. And that's generally, like I said, in Western societies. I meet people all the time. I have no clue what they do for work. They're just great people. And then somehow months later, the thing of what they do for work pops up. Like there's a guy that I do jiu-jitsu with. I had no clue what this guy did for work. He's a local Costa Rican. And then one day he tells me something about what he arresting someone. I was like, oh, you're a cop. And he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, I didn't even know. I didn't know you're a cop. But then the deeper story comes out that not only is he a cop, but he's a cop that just became a multimillionaire because his family owns a lot of land in town and everyone's trying to buy up land. So his land, they bought like whatever, how many acres, and he was given like $3 or $4 million. And so he's this cop that became a recent multimillionaire. And all these, he's just a guy that I've been doing jiu-jitsu with for months. And, and we've never asked these questions. But in the States, someone will ask you that within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think that part of me, now the we part, and this is a bigger conversation, is that what I'm going to say will sound, I think, just different to people who don't know what I'm talking about. For the people who do know what I'm talking about, then maybe they have an alignment to what I'm saying. Because there is a part of our history that people basically blocked off of. There's a lot of ideas from it's like, oh, human race is only as long as this book is, or human race is only as old as this is. And then finally find more information. Oh, there's only 9 planets. And then, oh, wait, there's more. And oh, there's only this. A lot
it's
of
kind
padding.
of horrible. Keep doing this.
A lot of padding that happens. And the reason why there's padding is because if people really knew what we were, this planet would come back to being harmonized. Can you please turn on the light real quick? This planet would be harmonized. And the reharmonizing of it would bring up too much of a unity that, let's say, to keep someone in power can't have. So it's important, I believe, that, especially that thing I talked about before, the soul talk, that people realize the soul is real. And most people don't get a chance to ever realize that their whole life. They live most of their lives under an idea about the soul, like almost like a metaphor. And when that's always a metaphor, not something tangible, the moral compass and the decisions that are made and the way they treat themselves and each other, it's very surface level because it's always a metaphor. But when you experience that your soul is actually real, which it is, that's when there's a shift. And that's when there's a moment of someone going, okay, wait a second here. Maybe we are not what we thought we were. And who taught us what we were anyway? And have they been right about other things? And you're like, nope, the story keeps changing. So why would a story keep changing? And I think what happens is hopefully more people who come to that awareness in their own way, however they do it, will realize that I'm not gonna say we're more powerful in the sense, like there's this idea of like, well, it's that we're more unified. And when we're more unified, that's when we're more powerful. So
such a good point.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and it doesn't mean the same, but it
doesn't mean
means
the same. Doesn't mean the same. And also because it's so tricky. And once again, the branding thing, you have like new age branding and this kind of branding. And a lot of it has less to do with narcissism. No matter what anyone says, there's a lot of narcissism underlying these things. It's like, I am God, I am this, I am, right?
Especially I think in the United States where we're such a obsession, achievement, achievement obsessed culture of like being the top, being the best, which is great. It's great as an aspiration, but it's not as something that defines you.
Yeah, and also it's even implanted in the things we use. Like if you think of MySpace, that's narcissistic. It's mine. iPhone, it's mine. YouTube, singular, right? So we get used to this thing. How many followers do you have? How many people are following you? How many people idolize you? You must be special. But at the same time, you have people who are being idolized who I would never invite to dinner. So what does that mean when people idolize someone who I would never invite into my home? And I definitely wouldn't have them to lead me or advise me on anything. There's people right now who are some of the most known people in the world that I would never ask for advice about anything. But people go to them to replicate their program because they want their program, which usually manifests capitalism and sexual manipulation or attention. But there's only a few things that these people that are followed that don't have much substance actually offer. And if you remove those three things, you realize there is no more power of that person. And it's male or female. It's not like a gender thing. It's just the attributes that are added to these qualities. And so and this is the interesting thing about, let's say, the part of the species, because you said thing about learning, is that it learns from rewards. Now, there's a trick to that. When you give someone a reward without them earning it, they start to believe they deserve it, which is faulty. The other trick to that is when you teach someone to get a reward based on prior accolades, they tend to get lazy, right? When you give someone a reward for, in some cases, just being who they are, like literally just because you are who you are, you get an award. Because you look like what you look like, you get an award. But not really doing anything for it, just because of that. And we start to learn this behavior. The part that to me, which is scary because of that, because people are learning that way, is when AI comes to its full walking moments. Like right now, AI is not even really birthed. It's going to start crawling soon. When AI is fully walking, it's not going to care about humans who don't want to learn correctly. It's going to remove them. And I don't think I think most people can't conceive that, because the thing about the human species is interesting. You can recall something from 10 years ago. You can live in the present and you can try and plan for the future. But most people don't live with a plan that's past a year. The people who live with plans 3, 5, 10 years, go back to that visionary thing I was talking about. They're like, this is my plan. I'm going to do this because this is where I'll be in 3, 5, 10 years. Most people kind of do like a year, 6 months. AI will be able to plan for 100 years. So they can't conceive that far. of what will change.
Man, we had a session yesterday with Ram Ananda, who I'm very excited to invite you and he onto a deep dive panel on AI and consciousness in Q1 of 2023 as we extend the Global Unity Summit conversations, because I think that can be a really fascinating one. This is a whole topic onto its own. We only have a little bit of time yet, so I want to make sure that I do get to ask you a little bit about your work, everything we're talking about, and how this relates to the Billboard 500 Club and what you're doing with that, where these two coincide.
Yeah, okay, 2 minutes. Let's see.
Oh, you got more than two, but I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Well, there's a few things that we're working on. So the first part is I'm mentoring musicians who truly feel like they're called to this. And I think it's very important to say the word call. When someone says, I feel called to whatever that thing is, it's because they're hearing a frequency. And that frequency is pulling them back to their original intention. When someone uses that verbiage, I feel called to music, that's when I want to help them. When someone wants to become famous, I don't want to help them, because I know the toolkit that I'll give them, they can't find anywhere else. I know that. So I'm sitting on information that I only want to give to people who truly feel called to music, because I believe the people who truly feel called to it, people who can help change the world for the better, because they'll feel that call when they start stepping to a place that doesn't actually serve them or serve others.
Yeah.
So in that, I teach them everything from production, artistry, singing. It's not just myself. We have like 35 mentors who are all, the criteria to be a mentor in our club is you have to be a current award winner, or you have to be currently working on a major film, movie, or record label. So all the mentors are people who are currently in the business at very high levels, because I believe that if you want to learn to become a doctor, you can't learn from, and it's not saying once again gender, you can't learn from a nurse. It's not going to happen. If you're going to be a surgeon, you have to learn from a surgeon. You can't learn from a pediatric doctor. Like these people cannot teach you. And so I think what happens a lot of times at colleges, artists go into debt, massive debt that no one talks about. So you have this very creative, empathic person who goes into debt for $200,000, and they're not going to make $200,000 in the next 10 years because they actually don't know how the business works. They spent those years trying to learn their craft, not the business. Those are two different things. Music, music industry, two completely different worlds. So that's the reason why everyone has a friend or family member who can play piano or play guitar or sing, but not everyone has a friend or family member that's successful in the music industry and makes over 6 figures a year. There's a reason for that. It's because music and the music industry are two different things. So what we're doing is we're helping more conscious artists and just people in general understand their craft, really get down and build a community, so that way they don't have to spend money hiring major producers and going to debt at schools or going to debt with mixing or whatever it is. They can work amongst each other, and everyone, if not, it pretty much works for free for one another, because they're all doing this as a passion, and they're all then making money selling their art and getting out there and touring. And we have some people who are touring together now. So that's what the club is doing. Now we have recording studios here, and we're building a recording studio in Nashville. So that way we can, and it'll be a part of our bigger company, our conglomerate, which is Nosada Media, where we can help to mature artists who are thinking consciously. Now that's more of the on the ground troops who are where we're hoping in the next 5 years will be very successful and be able to work with one another and basically create an internal label of their own, where they don't need anything outside of themselves, because they'll have enough of them to tour in different cities and help out one another. And that's the major goal, which I'm already seeing this happen. We've already have people in our club who've only done music for 2 years, and we've already gotten them on movies, on major films, because we bring the people working on the films to work with the upcoming artists, and then they start to put their songs in there. So I have like 4 or 5 mentees underneath me now who are in major films, who 2 years of them even being underneath me and working in music. They're like 21 years old. So I've seen things happen so fast when you put the right components together. But the bigger thing, which I might have mentioned to you prior, is we're building an immersive experience where we'll basically be, in a sense, a 3D projected dome that when you enter into it, I think I told you before, where it's called a tuning concert, where people will go in, musicians from different countries will be there, people who are true experts. All the frequencies of the instruments will be tuned to healing frequencies. And it'll be a full experience, almost similar to a medicine journey, where the projections on the walls, the frequencies of the sounds bouncing off the walls really will hit people at a cellular DNA level, and it'll be able to awaken them in a sense of actually going through a really transformative experience through sound and through visuals. So that's the next goal, is to build this over the next year and dedicate our time and our lives to making these concerts where people, my goal is in the next 8 years, when someone says, I'm going to a concert, someone goes, have you been to a tuning concert?
Yeah.
So that you leave and you actually feel like you've been tuned again and reset.
Mm-hmm. Literally, physically, emotionally, psychologically. Spoiler alert. This has been something that's been on my mind for quite some time. I've talked about it behind the scenes with Love Out Loud and In Truth, who are actually going to bring on next, Melinda Whitstock with Podopolo. She's doing some incredible things, revolutionizing not just podcasting, but how we communicate through community. Live Nation is one of their partners now. And so I've been thinking about what sort of these tuning festivals through partnerships like this might look like, and actually bringing this fully immersive experience of music to the world, where there's an awareness of, yes, this is programming. You are choosing this programming, and you're choosing to step into this and to observe how it's affecting you. So exciting.
Beautiful.
I don't know. I don't know how this lands with you too. I just got an audience request. Someone is interested to know if you can play us a quick song before you go.
Play you a song?
Do it.
In what sense? You mean
Anything hard on the keys?
I don't know if I'm in song mode right now.
Song. All right, next time, because there's so many things that we could dive into here. Good question has been passed on.
Yeah,
maybe direct the community to where they could support your music in lieu of a live performance.
Yeah, there's so my band is called Sons of Legion. It's SONS of Legion, LEGION. And we are releasing a lot of material. We have a bunch of songs up on Spotify now, and we just got permission from Phil Collins, or we had it, but now we shot the video. So we got permission from Phil Collins to do a version of In the Air Tonight. So that's the next release that we're doing, which is really nice to get the permission to do such a impactful song. So we just shot the video in Los Angeles, and then in the new year in January, that's when that will be coming out. So that's what we're working on.
Roll. Do I have the right link here? Is that looks like you?
Yeah, that's it. And then on Spotify, if anyone listens to it's like rock, blues, soul. So if anyone likes music like that, please feel free to add us on Spotify.
Right. Adding that to our notes here.
This was such a rad conversation, you guys. And I just want to share, Adam, like your perspective around what someone feels called to is basically a frequency. And I've given a lot of thought to the feeling of being called, but the lack of contemplation that often is around what's like what is calling you. Okay, you feel called, but like what is calling you? And to really put it in that frame, I think for anyone that feels they have a calling, whether it's music or something else, like connecting to that understanding that there's an energetic vibrational match to something inside you and the thing that is calling you, also to give you courage. You know, what you want is wanting you, that there's already a match for you to feel called. And I think trusting in your calling, stepping into that hero's journey can be such an overwhelmingly, scary thing filled with so much transformation and change. And just that knowing, I don't know, when I heard that, there was like a real sense of safety in knowing that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this too, just to end it, because I know we got to take off. But I think also when we think about these things in a modern society, we have to remove money, because someone being called to music does not mean being called to money. And so what I've experienced when I meet people is they'll say, I'm called to music. And I'm like, all right, let's make you the best music we possibly can. because that's the best chance we have to giving you a chance to, let's say, make a living out of this so you can really focus on it. And so I always try to help people realize, if you get to make music every day of your life, who cares if you make millions of dollars? As long as you can, if that can be the thing that you can do, which means we just have to figure out, just like teachers, some people say, I love to teach, and they might only make $45,000 a year, $50,000 a year, but they love to teach. So they'll do it all these years. I wish more musicians, and my only hope for more musicians is that I can help them get to a place where they can sustain themselves to truly do that love, because through that, they become better. They're able to work in bigger networks. And then over time, they're just become a master of your craft because you're doing something you love. And I think a lot of times people put a dollar sign on it. So if they don't hit this certain threshold by a certain date, they just give up. And I'm like, but that's your calling. Why would you give up on it? Oh, well, because I want the nice house with the thing. And I'm like, those things probably will happen at some point if you keep doing it. But if you just stop because you haven't received something quick enough, it usually, that calling will always be there. And that's what I've seen. I've met people when they get older and they're like, I still feel called to music. I'm like, why did you not do it? And they're like, oh, well, I had to do something else. I'm like, well, society told you they had to think, not you did.
Yeah.
Like come up a lot for me recently of like how many times I haven't started down one of the creative paths have been calling me because I didn't know how I was going to turn it into something. And I just recently remembered, wait a minute, let me go back to what I did it for as a kid, which was because it made me feel good, and start there.
And that you followed it. You followed it. That call sometimes is almost like a pulling of a thread, and you have to keep following the pull, and without knowing what it's going to look like when the sweater's completely undone. And you got to just keep doing that. And I think that's the art of almost being able to ride frequency. When I play piano, I have zero clue what I'm going to play. And I'll play straight without taking a break for hours. You were here one time when I played for just hours, had no clue what I was playing because I'm just following a thread. And I think that's kind of like a thing, is just who knows where it's going to go, but learning how to follow it.
Such a
these conditions.
Right. What's that?
I was just going to say, these conditions we put around the thing that we love, like a story I often tell is a moment I had with a parent I used to run in my first company a lot of high school programs. And the high school programs are all around following your purpose, finding your calling, your dream, finding your sense of belonging in the world. All of those amazing things that should be taught in school but aren't. And one of the students was a musician, and her parents got angry that we were basically telling her, or not telling her, but empowering her to believe in her dream, right? Because that's not the path they saw for her. And she's getting, the mom was getting angry at me one day about this. And I just listened to it. And then I was like, you know what? Is the issue here that you don't want your daughter to be a musician? And she said, yeah. I don't think it's a safe route for her. And then I just said, well, does your daughter sing every day? And she said, yes. I said, does your daughter play guitar every day? Yes. Does your daughter write songs most days? Yes. And I said, well, whether or not you accept it, your daughter is a musician. What you do with that is a different story, but that is who she is. And I think, even in the broader conversation of global unity, so much of this comes back to allowing what is true already. Global unity, this beautiful harmony, this synergy that we exist in, which is the present moment, all of that is already there and available to us, but we fight with it. And I think when an artist has a calling, the suffering doesn't come from following the calling. Like I lived in my van for 2 years following my dream with no money in my bank. They were the happiest days of my life. It's not material. It's the joy of what you love, but it's the conditions that we put around it that cause us suffering because it creates conflict. Yep. And a lot of the time, like I'd love to hear your view on this, Adam, but a lot of the time it's not the artists, the entrepreneurs, the visionaries that I've heard, speak to this very pain. A lot of the time they don't care about the house. It's that other people around them care about the house and they put pressure on them, which they succumb to. The artists themselves, most of the time, just wants to do what they love, and be free in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that so often. And I think also, I can only tell from my experience too, but I think you start to realize you only need certain things to really be happy. And you can have a massive house, you can have a massive car, you can have all these things. But if they add more stresses, then you realize after a certain point, it's just worth it to have the things you really need. And that's it. And the other things are nice, don't get me wrong, but usually, like you said, it's nice for other people to say, oh my God, look at the house, or oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And that's really where it tends to lead itself towards. And honestly, I've seen more people, especially lately, especially in entertainment industry, I think have more stresses than ever before because the business has changed. So before there was a myth around you. Like if you were on tour and you were an artist, you could go backstage and there was a myth about you. But now you got to share your personal life in order to connect with people. That was never a thing.
Yeah.
Other people don't have to share their personal lives. Other people don't have to go into their house and see what they're doing in order for them to have fans like their art. There's no painter who's like, you got to go through my house for you to really know who I am, for you to buy my art piece. No, just buy my art piece. It's a nice art piece.
We need to host a conversation, I think, in one of the follow-up conversations around, is an artist their art? And I think that is such an important conversation, especially as we enter this period of Renaissance, because I think that this inseparability, because of our, influence of having access to people's lives in these ways through social media, reality TV, blah, 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 it has created no distinction between someone's art and who they are as an artist, or just who they are, and I don't know. I think that many people have varying opinions on that, but I think if we make someone their art and completely inseparable, because that's how an artist often feels. They're dying to their creation every single moment, but that's also what creates suffering and torment, so the expectation that there can be no separation, and to support an artist means that we need to see every single facet of their life. Otherwise, who are they really, and how can I really enjoy their art, rather than just appreciating the art, and taking a step back and observing the flower instead of picking the flower. I think it's a really important part, because humans are imperfect, and we're riddled with contradiction, all of us. And if that's
picking the flower, it's also picking it apart.
Yeah.
It's not just picking the flower, it's literally picking all the petals off. And like, do I like this petal? I don't know. Do I like that petal? I don't know. I thought you liked the song.
Yeah.
Like, what's all this other stuff?
Yeah, totally. To be continued. People,
yes, I know you have to go, so no stress.
People have loved this conversation, Adam. We're just looking at various threads. So thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. I enjoyed the talk, and next time if you need me, just let me know. Reach out.
Super excited to continue this. I was Nick, I was telling Adam that I think it'd be amazing to do a deep dive focus session with Adam and Ram, touching on frequency and AI, and kind of going to a little bit of that depth in 2023.
Yeah, I totally. And also like art, let's have a conversation around the way these advancements are trying to mimic art. And I'm so passionate about that one topic, that like the spontaneity of the spirit, the flow, the synergy that is so richly experienced in music when musicians jam, right, can never be emulated through something that is predictive. And the fact that we are trying to emulate that, and we're looking at the perfection, the technical perfection of how probability can create something that maybe mimics art. But what really is art? To me, art is the expression of the divine, the spontaneous imprint into the present moment, which can never be replicated through any level of prediction. I think that theory is so flawed and is going to remove us from the spirit in such a profoundly terrible way,
I agree with you. And the part where it gets tricky is, okay, I'm gonna leave it on this. So here's where it gets tricky. When there's like a product, when someone's trying to sell it, like let's say a company develop something and they have this great branding and they go, this is great, but if we put this on the store shelves, no one's going to know how it works. So we have to have people go to each store and show everyone and train them how it works. You know, some products they have to do that with because everyone's like, what's this? They walk right past it. So they have to people actually go and they hire trainers to say, oh, come here, you got to try this product. You hold it like this, you do that, blah, blah. What we're talking about, what you're talking about, right? With art, where they're doing, have you seen all these people who are posting pictures of themselves that look like AI? This has become one person posts it, and then everyone wants to do it. Like I stay far away from this stuff. I'm like, this is weird. Whenever people start to do things, boom, 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 boom.
What is that? What is this fascination with making an avatar version of ourselves?
Because they're looking for perfection.
Yes.
They're looking for perfection. Okay.
Why is no one talking about this? Like,
so here's the part that's weird. When you have adults doing it, they're then training their kids to do it.
Yeah.
So back to what you said, and this is where I said it gets tricky. I was playing on the open AI, the open chat the other day. And when I went on to show my musicians, I said, I want to show you something that's going to scare you. And I typed in, write a song in the style of Bob Dylan. In less than 5 seconds, it went, it wrote a whole entire song with great lines. I pressed refresh. It gave me a whole nother song. I said, write a song for like Bob Dylan for Adele. Give me a whole bunch of ones. Write a song like Lil Wayne. But here's where things get scary. That part we were talking about of that, I'll call it impulse, but impulse also has a pulse, which is a resonation. It's a frequency. It's a pulse.
It's an expression, which is art.
Talking about that thing though is being weaned out in the next generation from the parents.
I know. This has to be a whole series. I want to create a whole course on this because it is seriously like the fact that people aren't having this conversation, that there's this kind of superficial version of this conversation around like, is art from AI really art? But no one's talking about it through the imprint of the frequency, the vibrational expression when a human being is expressing an experience, a pain, an emotion, a joy, a happiness. This is what permeates and makes like the magic, you know, that is art. We can't.
I don't think the younger generation will know what it is though. That's what I mean. I don't think they will know. I don't think a 10-year-old kid now, when that kid's 17, because they're being programmed to see things that are false, they won't know the difference. Like they will buy the CD or they'll buy the song from the avatar singer and not care because they've been looking at cartoons anyway. Yeah. There's no difference.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, we have this conversation and I think approach it from poking holes in our arguments too, and really look at, well, why is this attractive to people as a creative outlet? Like, what does that mean if they're actually looking at this, outsourcing their creativity?
Nothing to do with being with a
quicker and it's more exact. I mean, like everything in evolution goes forward from two ways. It's from efficiency or from mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the only way things are evolved. So it's efficient and it makes perfection. It's going to keep on going.
No one is talking about the cost. Yeah, the cost of this. So let's have a series about this next year. Thank you.
Done. Yeah. Oh, maybe you have 2 sessions for this. Thank you so much, Adam. I know we went a little bit over. This has been so great. We've got a million things to talk to you about. So thanks for giving people a peek behind the scenes.
Will do. All right. Well, it's good seeing you all, and I will see you again soon.
Wow. Thanks for what you're doing, Adam.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.